It was this image that turned me into a fan and student of Sensei Takehiko Inoue. From a pen and ink learning perspective, 3 things that stood out about this master is his distinctive style, eye control of the instrument, and economic technique. Takehiko Inoue's visual narrative is dynamic, realistic, relatable, and immediately recognizable. His creations incite an emotion through visuals you get attached to, and Vagabond is one of those stories that slowly seeps into your soul. Let's agree that we each have a natural way of making marks that comes more naturally. For instance, I'm more comfortable primarily pulling marks towards me. Some artists prefer to push the marks away from the body. Sensei uses both motions based on what he's illustrating and adjusts how he holds each tool to get the desired effects. This is how he holds a mechanical pencil. His hand then moves higher on the shaft when using a dip pen. He holds the brush more upright than a dip pen and a little closer to the tip like a pencil. You might argue the tool doesn't make the artist, but Sensei makes the most of each instrument to produce fluid, decisive, and exquisite lines. So I practice Sensei's holds and motions to train my muscle memory. What fascinates me about his techniques is what I would call an economy of lines. In this image of Kojiro, you might be thinking, Chloe, there's tons of lines. How is this an economy? Look closer. Here for the swords, it's drawn in scribbles. At a glance, it looks like a detailed rendered contour drawing, but the scribbles precisely explain shadows, highlights, proportions, volume, and texture. Those scribbly strokes even convey the weight of the swords. When I say it's not a rendered contour drawing, there are spots where the edges are altogether missing for the viewer to subconsciously close the contours. For Kojiro's clothing, his hakama, the folds of drapery have no edges. This is how you typically see cloth drawn, here by Kentaro Miura and Mobius, where lines are placed to emphasize the folding edges. Notice how the spacing between the marks follow a value scale. Those values describe the shading from the folds, and the white of the paper is where the folds catch light. Adding edges would then feel redundant. That same restraint continues through to his characters. The marks build shading to compose the expression of characters at that moment. Now for brushwork, let's talk about that hair. Here, he didn't even draw the head. It's implied with just a few judicious strokes. One of my favorite scenes in chapter 211 is where Kojiro and Musashi tried to slice a snowman with a twig. I was quite keen to draw Kojiro, but I know you're here for Musashi. Many of you had requested that I ink a piece using brushes. Challenge accepted, but I'm a pen artist. Control of a brush for drawing is something I'm working on. To warm up, in my sketchbook I drew Musashi with a Kuretake brush pen, aiming to mimic the same holding position and motions with the brush as the master. In my second sketch of Musashi, I used a Pentel color brush. Then I went ahead and redrew that same image in pencil on a Bristol Vellum paper. For the ink application, I used the G-nib to render the facial features, mindful to be economical with the placing of the lines, following my observation of the sensei's techniques. Where the marks are positioned and the spacing between those lines together describe a lot of the information about the character's features and their intent. I don't have those Japanese mangaka brushes. I use Kolinsky sable brushes, which are more commonly used for drawing comics. For the remainder of this illustration, I concentrated my efforts on fluid motions with the brush. I aim for the sensei's signature style, brush-drawn hair. This was fun. I learned a lot. I hope that my observations gave you fresh ideas for your pen and ink projects and that you're excited about Takehiko Inoue's works. If you're on Instagram and this video inspired you to also draw a Musashi, do tag me and I'll share it in my stories. And thanks again for spending time with me. See you in the next one.